Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about horror movies that are way better than they have any right to be. And with that, let's get to the list.
Makes me wish I'd driven the extra 40 miles to the next rest stop.
That wouldn't have helped.
Why? Is there a troll living in that one?
Glorious is a 2022 cosmic horror movie. Directed by Rebecca McKendry, it stars Ryan Quanten and J.K. Simmons. The story follows a heartbroken man who encounters a primordial deity in a nearby bathroom stall that requires him to satisfy it through the stall's glory hole.
You're not in the least bit curious as to what I have to say.
I'm just not into conversations with random dudes hiding out in bathroom stalls.
So, kicking this list off, I went with Glorious because, to me, nothing says more that it's way better than it should be than this movie. Like, this really is the definition to me of what I'm talking about. Because the premise of this sounds so silly. Even the trailer, it leans into the humor of it. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's definitely some jokes in this. It does have some funny elements. Like I said, the setup alone is pretty humorous. But the directions that this goes and how quickly it turns pretty savage and definitely has a darker edge to it than I had any idea it would have. It does all that pretty quickly. So you're left with kind of forgetting that this has a silly setup and are just in for this ride of a serious, pretty demented cosmic horror movie. It also has some really great special effects and looks fantastic, especially considering the majority of the movie is just in this bathroom stall. What they're able to do with that and the places that it goes, so to speak, are really pretty damn cool. And then pretty much the entire cast is just Ryan Quanten and then the voice of J.K. Simmons. And they're just having this back and forth dialogue. But the things that it deals with and how it puts all that together, there's a lot of a mystery to this and definitely takes some cool twisted turns. And like I said, gets much darker and creepy than I really ever thought it would. So if you're one of those out there that have just skipped by this because you're not a big fan of horror comedies, you've seen the trailer or whatever, it just seems like a silly premise and not anything that would really get you, I'm telling you, if you give this movie a chance, it'll probably end up surprising you. Mads is a 2024 French horror movie. Directed by David Moreau, it stars Lucille Guillemette, Laurie Pavey, and Milton Reach. A teenager who stops off to see his dealer to test a new drug before heading off for a night of partying comes across an injured woman, which takes the night into a bizarre, surreal turn. This is probably the biggest surprise for me of last year. I did not see this coming, didn't hear much of anything about it as far as buzz going in. Just kind of on a whim saw, hey, there's a new movie on Shudder. Heard a couple people talking about it, saying it was cool and worth checking out. And so I did, and it just blew me away. For one, this movie is all one take. It's literally no cuts. And I was skeptical of that until I heard from the behind the scenes, saw the behind the scenes footage, things like that, and realized, yeah, the whole entire movie is just one go. They shot it all in one take a couple different days and then basically went with the best take. And it's so good on so many levels, but just that idea alone gives it this intensity and this weird quality that sucks you in pretty fast and really just grabs a hold of you. And you've probably heard, but this is a zombie movie of sorts, but it's not like any other zombie movie you've seen, I promise you. For one, just the way it's handled and it all being that one take gives it an intensity and a weirdness and a strange quality. But beyond that, the different turns and things that it does really makes for a different feel as well. Another thing is the way this movie is shot. Because it's all one take, the way they're able to shoot things, it just kind of keeps you in the face of all these different characters and makes you feel like you're one of the group, you know, that you're one of these friends just along for this night of having fun that goes terribly wrong. They also did something that I thought was really cool and also gave it a different feel, is that for a while you're tracking one character and then seamlessly now you just go off with this other character, and then later on you'll come back around and see what happened with this other person. And just the way that is done as well, it just once again feels so fresh and unique. But I think this movie is an absolute home run, and especially if you're a fan of artsy, unique, experimental type of horror movies, this is one of the better experimental ones I've seen in quite a while. So I think without a doubt, you should do yourself a favor and check this one out.
Not a gift, is he? Then why was it given? I'm not afraid of you, is he? You will be.
Hellbender is a 2021 horror movie, written, directed, and starring John Adams, Zelda Adams, and Toby Poser. The story follows a mother and daughter rock band living in an isolated woodland home, whose relationship is challenged when the daughter meets other teens.
Made a worm. Are your friends okay? You've opened a door that, once it's open, it can be hard to shut.
This is another movie that is truly special and unique in a lot of ways because of how it is created. Because if you're not familiar with the family that made this movie, they're the Addams family, not like the cartoon or the TV show, but their actual names are the Addams. And they make movies, and they basically do everything themselves. Direct it, write it, shoot it, act in it, like pretty much all of it. And I'm not always a huge fan of all of their work, but usually that's not because of them, but because of the cast. They are working on a budget, and so a lot of times the actors that are in their movies are not the greatest. But in this one, it's really just them. They did this during the pandemic, and so it's really the family, the dad, the daughter, and the mother, and then I think another one of the daughters. That's pretty much the only people you see on screen. And it's just such a lush, gorgeous, creepy, dark, gritty movie. I just love it. And especially for a folk horror, witchy type of movie, this is one of the better little tiny budget ones you'll find. Beyond that, the music in this, they play the music, and a lot of these songs are awesome. I'm telling you, the soundtrack to this is killer as well. But it's gorgeously shot, well directed. The cast does great because, like I said, it's really just the family, but everything involved with this is really awesome. And I think more people really need to see this because, yes, it's a tiny movie, so never really got any love, didn't get a theatrical release, all of that, mostly too because it came out during the pandemic. But just in general, it's one of those micro budget kind of films that a lot of times don't get a lot of love. It just went over to Shudder and pretty much lives there. But I think it's a real gem, and especially if you're looking for a small movie that'll kind of surprise you and go for it a lot more than you expect, this is a fantastic pick.
You can hear that bell.
What Josiah Saw is a 2021 Southern Gothic horror movie. Directed by Vincent Grashaw, it stars Robert Patrick, Nick Stahl, and Kelly Garner. The story follows members of a damaged family before they reunite at their remote farmhouse, where they will confront long-buried secrets and sins of the past.
There's something that he's doing. I need to wait till dark to tell you. It's dark now.
Man, this one just floored me. I did not expect it at all to be as grimy, as greasy, as gritty and dark as it is. It really goes for it, and it's also pretty original and unique because the way the story goes, it takes you in this winding different directions where you feel like you're going along in one direction and it's going to be this kind of movie, and then it'll shift and slowly become something else, and then ultimately comes back around and goes and does something else with that. And I have so much fun with movies like that because they just keep you guessing, they keep you off kilter and feeling never right, and they just leave you with this really uneasy feeling. This is a bit of a slow burn, a much more of a dialogue driven kind of movie, so you got to be in the right headspace for that. But I think if you're a fan of dramatic psychological horror, this is one you absolutely need to see.
I can't wait to kill her.
All Eyes is a 2022 dark comedy horror movie, written and directed by the Greenlee brothers. It stars Jasper Hammer, Ben Hall, and Daniel Yvonne Ploger. It's about a disgraced podcaster who interviews an eccentric farmer who claims to have a monster living in the woods near his house.
There's a giant beast that lives in the woods. My plan is to lure it to my house, trap it, and kill it.
God almighty, did this movie surprise me. This is another one that is kind of that definition of what I'm talking about here. Because this movie is so much better than it has any right to be. This is another one that's really made on a dime. Like, you could tell how little of resources they had, but they made the most out of everything they're working with. Because for the vast majority of this movie, it just takes place at this one location. But don't get it twisted. This movie is exciting. This movie is wild and goes in a lot of different directions. And when I say it's a dark comedy, it's not necessarily one that's going to make you laugh out loud a lot, but it's more of dark and twisted, and there's humor in that. Think of comedy as in more of something that makes you feel weird and off kilter than necessarily something that makes you laugh. This movie is also crazy because it's going along one way and then all of a sudden just takes a dramatic shift and almost feels like a different movie for a while. And then it comes back to it, but it doesn't feel disjointed at all. All of that makes sense for the story and fits, and it gives it a really fun flavor to it because of the fact that it's willing to take risk and be different. But I also love the cast here. I think they're so much fun. They're such a good duo. The conversations that they have back and forth are super entertaining on their own. So I think if you're looking for something interesting and different, unique, something that'll definitely surprise you, then All Eyes is a great pick. Spring is a 2014 romantic body horror movie, directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. It stars Lou Taylor Pucci and Nadia Hilker. The plot follows a young man who travels to Italy and pursues a young woman who, unbeknownst to him, harbors a dark secret.
Are you really from around here?
Half undiscovered science, bunch of confusing biochemistry, and some crazy hormones.
This one surprised me in a different way than the ones I've talked about to this point. Because going in, I never ever thought that someone could make a romantic horror movie work. And this, I mean, they do. Like, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead are such fantastic filmmakers. Every one of their movies, even though they're tiny and you wouldn't expect much from them, they always surprise you with the way they do movies, the way they tell stories. They're never cookie cutter, paint by numbers. They're always doing something brave and adventurous and different. And that's the case here because it has a great heart to it. You really love these characters. You really want to see them end up happily ever after. But yet there is still horror here. There is still body horror elements. It does still deal with a lot of these interesting things that are horror, and yet somehow it feels like a great love story too. And both those things exist, but yet they're put together in a way that makes sense, that feels seamless, that doesn't feel forced, and really surprised me. Because at the end of the day, if you have great characters, that goes a long way in making a good movie. Because even a horror movie, if you really care about the characters, you care what happens to them. And so there's a lot more stakes. So if something happens to one of them, you really feel that. That impacts you much more than if it's like a Friday the 13th where you don't care about these teens. You just want to see them get killed in the most brutal way imaginable. On top of that, this movie is so gorgeous. The location that they shot this in Italy is one of the most beautiful, majestic scenery places I've ever seen on film. The way they capture it in this, it just makes you want to go there. It's so full of romance and just, it makes someone like me who's never been to Italy just really want to go there. But if you've never seen Spring and you're wanting something different tonight, I am telling you, this is a great, great choice. Frogman is a 2023 found footage horror movie, written and directed by Anthony Cousins. It stars Nathan Timashuk, Benny Barrett, and Chelsea Grant. Three friends in search of the Loveland Frogman find out that he is much more than a local legend.
All right, down in the woods. What the fuck was that?
I'm really excited to talk about this one again. I've mentioned it before, I can't remember which video, but I've definitely talked about it. But it's one that, even if you're not necessarily a fan of found footage, I think you might be surprised with this one. Especially if, like the rest of the movies on this list, you are looking for a movie that's gonna catch you by surprise and do things and be a lot more original and unique than you're gonna expect it to. Because this movie is made with no money. It's like as bare bones of found footage as you're gonna pretty much find. It's really just a group of friends and an old camera running around filming stuff. But the things they do in this, where it ultimately goes, is what really makes this worth seeing. Because for a lot of this, it feels just like your traditional found footage movie, you know, interviewing people, like a Blair Witch type of thing. But it's the final act of this, where it comes through in the end, so to speak, and surprises you and does something that I definitely didn't see coming. Really makes it worth the wait, makes it really worth checking out. Another thing they do so well is it feels like real friends. It feels like real people. The people in the town that they interview feel like real people. I mean, it's one of the things that made Blair Witch work so well, is that everybody felt like real people, like regular people, not like actors, not like performers. And so you can easily get sucked into it and feel connected to the story. And so then things happening really affects you on a much deeper level. So I think this movie is a great time. You got to be patient with it. You got to know what you're getting in for. You got to be okay with handheld camera footage. But I do think by the end, it's a great time.
I don't know what's going on in my head, what's real, what's not. No, this isn't real.
What is happening?
Shrooms is a 2007 horror movie. Directed by Patty Bronick, it stars Lindsey Hawn, Jack Houston, and Max Cash. The plot follows a group of American students and their English guide who are stalked by a serial killer while out in the woods looking for psilocybin mushrooms.
Strange things happen up here around shroom season. People missing only for their bodies to turn up mutilated, but always with one thing in common.
What?
Here's a movie that I think in a lot of ways has kind of been lost to time because of back when it came out, this era, it's not really thought of as one of the best eras for horror. This era, for the most part, is remembered and thought of for the Hostel movies and Saw and just kind of the gore porn, so to speak, era. And so because of that, this movie has kind of slipped through the cracks. And I've been talking about it for a couple years now because I don't even know if I ever saw it back in the day when it came out, but I know for sure a couple years ago, I just put it on. I don't even remember why. And I was so surprised at how good this movie is and how interesting the setup actually is. Because on the surface, it sounds so dumb and like it's going to be like all these other teen slasher kind of movies. Like you got a bunch of pretty teens who are out partying and then, oh no, there's a serial killer after them. And yeah, that is the setup, but what they do with it, the idea that they are all kind of under the influence of these psychedelic mushrooms takes this movie into a really interesting, different direction because you are always questioning if what you're seeing in that moment is real or if it's part of the hallucination that your characters are going through. Beyond that, it also gives it a really cool look. It doesn't just look like your run-of-the-mill slasher movie either. And then on top of that, the location that it's shot in, this forest, the way it looks and how haunting and creepy it becomes through the movie because of, you know, the different things that are going on here, that also just adds another layer of complexity to this. So I'm not in any way saying this is a game changer per se. What I am saying though is it is way, way better than most of the movies from this era and absolutely one that is worth checking out. Teeth is a 2007 black comedy horror movie, written and directed by Mitchell Lichtenstein. It stars Jess Wexler, John Hensley, and Hal Appleman. Still a stranger to her own body, a high school student discovers she has a physical advantage when she becomes the object of male violence.
I think there might be something weird going on inside.
What have you put in here?
So this one absolutely shocked me because the setup of it sounds so dumb, cheesy. The trailer of it feels like a bad joke, so to speak. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I would really want to watch that, because I enjoy comedy and I enjoy black comedy horror movies. I'm a fan of those. But when it's a movie like this and the idea of basically a woman having teeth inside of her vagina, like the idea of that just feels like it's gonna just be dumb and not take it super serious. And like, really, how can you take that and make it into a serious movie? But the shocker of shockers is that they do. Yes, there is a little bit of black humor from the setup, but a lot of this movie it has a lot to say, and it goes in directions and becomes a lot more creepy and scary and haunting and weird, and all these fun things that I never ever expected it to be. But it's a movie that you gotta be a fan of weirdness, of gore, of body horror, stuff that makes you uncomfortable, just the bizarre stuff. But if you are, and you have yet to see Teeth, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. Influencer is a 2022 mystery horror thriller. Directed by Curtis David Harder, it stars Emily Tennant, Cassandra Nod, and Sarah Canning. While on a solo backpacking trip in Thailand, Madison, a social media influencer, meets CW, who travels with ease and shows her a more uninhibited way of living. But CW's interest in her takes a dark turn.
My boyfriend and I planned this trip together, and at the last minute, he bailed. You can come crash with me, I'll show you. I couldn't put you up. It's gonna be fine.
It's just so crazy how good this movie is. And I'm not alone in this. Enough people have made noise about it and appreciate this movie that they're actually making a sequel, which I never thought would happen. Most movies that just go over to Shudder, that's about it. They may get a little bit of a cult following, but you don't see sequels very often. And so when I heard they were making a sequel to this, that just made me so excited. But I get it, because I think this movie would have had a theatrical run and would have had a lot more buzz if it didn't come out around the pandemic. Because like a lot of movies, it just got thrown over on Shudder and it just kind of sat there. But everything about this movie is surprising and better than it has really any right to be. For one, I'm not a big fan of influencer stuff. I'm not someone that feels like we need a lot more of these movies that have to do with online social media influencers and you know, all of that stuff, you know, live streamers, like things like that. It just feels like something that is interesting for right now because it's a thing that's this all of a sudden out of nowhere new job, like what I'm doing right here, you know, that's this new thing. But it also is something that I don't feel like is going to have a lot of legs and not really age well, because in a number of years, I could see it as just something that kind of dates movies and doesn't really feel as interesting in the future as it does maybe to us right now. And we've had a number of them that are good. So I'm not saying that you can't make a good one, but for the most part, I just kind of roll my eyes when I hear of another one of these movies making something about online influencers of some kind. And so with that in mind, there's that. On top of that, the setup of it just doesn't seem super interesting either. But I am telling you, this movie, it keeps you guessing the whole time. It's an absolute thrill ride. Keeps you on the edge of your seat. The performances, I mean, Cassandra Nod, I had never seen her in anything prior to this, and now I'm a big fan of her work because she's incredible in this movie. It also gets a lot more dark and gritty and edgy than I thought it would either. Like, it really has a dark side, so to speak, to the directions that this movie takes it. But for a lot of it, it feels much more like a psychological mystery thriller than it does horror. But there are some things that start to happen where it becomes much more of a horror movie, and like I said, it gets a lot darker than it seems like it's gonna go. But I just think this is another one of those that just really defines what I'm talking about. A movie that on the surface, on the cover, so to speak, the book cover, is not what you think it's gonna be, and there's actually a lot more layers, a lot more interesting things to it than it seems like it's gonna be. And so it just goes to show you that age-old saying of never judge a book by its cover. Well, it's the same with movies. Never judge what a movie seems like it's gonna be based off of, you know, just a little blurb or a trailer or whatever. Because a lot of times with a little movie, these indie kind of movies especially, the marketing and all that isn't really there. And so they're a lot better than they really ever seem like they will be. Another thing about this movie is it's gorgeously shot. The location that it's set in, the way it's shot with all the different drone footage, is just an absolutely stunning looking movie. And then the soundtrack is incredible to this. It's a definite one to look up just by itself on Spotify, because I'm telling you, it's a mood, but it's a really interesting one. So I'm just a fan of everything about this movie. I think it really is a hidden gem. But that's my list. But I would love to know down in the comments, what are movies that you recommend I check out that fit this description, where on the surface they seem like one thing, but they're surprising and they're a lot better than you really thought they would be. And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And I'll see you guys next time.